Well, good morning. Except as I record this, it's not morning. If you've been paying real close attention, you'll notice this is the same shirt I wore for my announcement about our plans of trying to get ready to reopen the church after this is all over. It's also the same shirt I wore for my Wednesday night prayer meeting. No, I don't wear dirty clothes. Yes, I'm wearing the same clothes because I'm recording many of these things on the same day, trying to squeeze all these things around, hopefully as encouragements for you all around my regular work involving students and college work online also. As it is right now, every day, 5 days a week, I spend at least probably 6 to 8 hours talking to the computer screen, talking to people online, talking to people via video conferences. Most of the time like this, me talking to the screen with no idea who's on the other side, listening, paying attention, or getting anything out of it. I hope you're getting a lot out of these devotionals. I appreciate the fact that you are logging in daily and sharing some of these with your friends. I appreciate the hard work Chris is also put in, not only in recording these videos for you each and every day, but he also edits them, he cleans them up, he fixes the audio quality as the case might be, and then he has to upload them through his computer onto Facebook and YouTube. And so all in all, a 10-minute video probably requires between he and I maybe upwards of a half an hour to get these ready to post. And that's not including the prep time to study the passage and get ready to share with you that way as well. And so it's our hope, it's our prayer that you've been benefited by these messages every day, that God is using them to encourage you, to feed your soul, to keep you going in some very strange days. They seem strange in that the things have not turned out as bad as we were told, thank the Lord. But they're still strange in that we're at home. We've not been at church. We don't get out as often as we used to. And so it's our prayer, our hope, that these have been a valuable addition to your spiritual life during this time period that we've been shut out from our church. This morning, we're talking about the book of Psalms again, Psalm number 9. It's fascinating. I teach my students in our Old Testament class at Charleston Southern that the Psalms have something to say about just about every area of your life. Adultery, war, death, rebellion, famine. And even now, though we're not necessarily finding verses in here talking about coronavirus 19, we are finding descriptions of scenes, of circumstances, episodes in the lives of the authors, very often as early on have been by David, that fit the very kind of things that we're going through as well. This case is true of Psalm 9 as well. So let's read Psalm number 9. And let's begin to work our way through this passage quickly this morning. I will give thanks to the Lord with my whole heart. I will recount all of your wonderful deeds. I will be glad and exult in you. I will sing praise to your name, O Most High. When my enemies turn back, they stumble and perish before your presence. For you have maintained my just cause. You have sat on the throne giving righteous judgment. You have rebuked the nations. You have made the wicked perish. You have blotted out their name forever and ever. The enemy came to an end in everlasting ruins. Their cities you rooted out. The very memory of them has perished. But the Lord sits enthroned forever. He has established his throne for justice, and he judges the world with righteousness. He judges the people with uprightness. The Lord is a stronghold for the oppressed, a stronghold in times of trouble. And those who know your name put their trust in you. For you, O Lord, have not forsaken those who seek you. Sing praises to the Lord, who sits enthroned in Zion. Tell among the peoples his deeds. For he who avenges blood is mindful of them. He does not forget the cry of the afflicted. Be gracious to me, O Lord. See my affliction from those who hate me. O you who lift me up from the gates of death, that I may recount all your praises, that in the gates of the daughter of Zion I may rejoice in your salvation. The nations have sunk in the pit that they have made, and the net that they hid, their own foot has been caught. The Lord has made himself known. He has executed judgment. The wicked are snared in the work of their own hands. The wicked shall return to Sheol, all the nations that forget God. For the needy shall not always be forgotten, and the hope of the poor shall not perish forever. Arise, O Lord, let not man prevail. Let the nations be judged before you. Put them in fear. Let the nations know that they are but men. And so here we have another song of David written to the choir master, meant to be sung before the congregation as a way to encourage, to promote worship among them. The circumstances of this particular psalm are not clear from the immediate reading of it. Many argue this is one of David's encounters with the various Philistine or other enemy tribes around him. But either way, it applies to our situation today. And we need to take heart. We need to take encouragement. We need to take the example from David and build on it. Won't be able to go through all of it. It's a long psalm this morning, but we can hit up some of the high points. And I think the high point becomes obvious from the get-go. In Psalm number 1, David says, I will give thanks to the Lord with my whole heart. I will recount all of your wonderful deeds. In spite of the enemy to whomever he's referring in this particular psalm, he says the first thing he needs to do is to give thanks to God, to recognize God as his encourager, that God is his sustainer, that all through all his troubles, it is God who has kept him. And we need to give thanks to God this morning as we go through this difficult time in our lives, that God is the one who needs credit. He's the one who gets thanks. Thanks that the situation with COVID-19 has not been worse in America than it has been. While there are certainly terrible spots around the country dealing with it, here in the low country, we've been largely protected from it. In my own county here, Berkeley County, I want to say that there's maybe less than 100 cases and only a handful of deaths. God has certainly spared us the major crisis that we were warned about a month ago. Doesn't mean it's not going to happen yet, but so far God has blessed us and kept us. We need to give thanks to him with our whole heart. And we need to recount all of his wonderful deeds. Literally, to be recounted means to count them again. In other words, we need to rehearse them. We need to play them over in our minds to remind ourselves, and if need be, to remind others of what God has done that has been so good and beneficial to us. In fact, he says in verse 2, I'll be glad and exult in you. I will sing praise to your name, O Most High. So the worship of God says, when my enemies turn back, in verse 3, when they finally go away, when the situation is finally better, they're going to stumble and perish before your presence. They're going to put evil behind you, God. He says, you maintain my just cause. You sit on your throne. You offer righteous judgment. He deals with the nations. He rebukes them. The wicked will perish. But verse 7 is, in spite of the apparent victory of the enemy right now, the Lord sits enthroned forever. The King of the universe is still on his throne, just as Isaiah saw in his vision. And he's established his throne for justice. That God's throne is not about might or power. It's about executing justice. He judges the whole world with righteousness, he says in verse 8. He judges the people with uprightness. God will judge, and he'll judge rightly and accordingly. He knows all things, and he can do all things. And so he's the perfect judge, and his judgment is our hope. In fact, he goes on to say in verse 9, the Lord is a stronghold for the oppressed, a stronghold in times of trouble, a judge to whom we can turn and trust that he'll do what's right, a judge who will protect the innocent, a judge who will watch over and care for the weak and those who are needy in times of trouble. And he says in verse 10, those who know your name put their trust in you, for you, O Lord, have not forsaken those who seek you. God is there. God is listening, as we've seen in some of these other Psalms. He's hearing our cries. He hears our prayers. He answers from on high. He's there if we'll seek him. As Jesus says, if you seek me, you'll find me. And so he says that he avenges those who are been oppressed. Sing praises to the Lord, verse 11, who sits on the throne. Tell the people his deeds. Share our faith. Give your testimony. Be gracious to me, verse 13, O Lord. See my affliction and those who hate me. O you who lift me up from the gates of death. God's aware. God hears. He'll lift us up. He's our hope. He's the one to whom we cry. And why should God do it, according to verse 14? That I may recount all your praises, that in the gates of the daughter of Zion I may rejoice in your salvation. God hears our cries, and he often answers our prayers, not just so that we may have or may be relieved, but always so that he'll be glorified. And so as we come through situations like this, or the death of a loved one, we're to come out on the other side, learned, perhaps a little more grayed, a little more withered, but all the more ready to give God the praises for bringing us through it. The nations will fall by the wayside. God will make known, verse 16, his judgment. The wicked will return to Sheol. The death that they experience now will be the death they'll experience after the judgment. All those nations that forget God. Verse 18, a word of encouragement for us this morning. For the needy shall not always be forgotten, and the hope of the poor shall not perish forever. It may feel like God's forgotten you right now. It may seem like everything's against you, that the enemy is winning. You will not be forgotten. That your hope doesn't perish forever. Arise, O Lord, is the prayer, verse 19. Let not man prevail. Let the nations be judged before you. Put fear in them, O Lord, and let the nations know that they are but men. And just as the enemy one day will learn that God is God and he is not, we too are reminded as we go through difficult seasons like this that God is on his throne, that he remains God, than we never were, and our hope is in him, his knowledge, his wisdom, his power, his ability, and not our own. May we learn through this pandemic to trust in God more, and may when we gather back together, give him all the more praise.